Hey, thank you for watching Pug TV. I'm Jadrian, and today we're doing the Band of Brothers, kind of a expanded combat example. I recently did do a Band of Brothers kind of a rules explanation, and there were some things that we left out because there's quite a bit to cover. When you actually start playing the game and you start adding in all the different elements, it is actually a really elegant system. And so last time we spent about an hour talking about a lot of aspects, going over counters and things of that nature. This time we'll actually kind of walk through kind of a gameplay sequence, since I'm going to be doing this kind of solitaire. I actually had the joy of this weekend. I got to play with a friend, and it really brought to light all the different modifiers for proficiency, for firepower, and it clarified quite a bit for me as well. And so we're going to go through and talk about some of those different things that we didn't cover in the last video and include those into this playthrough as well. And it was actually very fun. We did two scenarios. We did the second scenario, which is so few, led by so many, and then we did scenario number 6, I believe it was, and I forgot to get the name of that one, but they were both really fun. Number 2 was really good. It has just all infantry, and it allowed me to play and see a lot of pretty much everything that you need for infantry. And then the scenario 6 included guns, so you had your infantry plus then the gun emplacements. So I got to just expand my knowledge even more. So what we'll do is we're going to kind of walk through scenario number 2 a little bit. Probably won't play all 7 turns, since kind of playing solo, it has its charm, but I don't think I need to spend that much time to clarify things and maybe just show better examples of how combat flows with the modifiers and when to use them. And I'd say for the beginning, that was the most complicated thing for me. Well, not so much complicated, just the player aids that I had. Like, I just scoured the internet to try and find player aids. Sometimes it's best just to stick what comes with the game, because some of the player aids I found have a little bit of information that's needed spread across many. So I took some time to kind of take the player aids I did have and then kind of cut and pasted and made my own notes and stuff. So now I have a set of player aids that I probably should just stuck with what came with the game, but now everything kind of fits together. So we'll kind of walk through and explain a few things, and it's very fun. And I hope the last video got you thinking about the game and sparked some interest in the different systems. And then once you see some of those things again today in more of a combat example, it'll make much more sense. It's a really elegant system. So what I have here, different from last time, is I'm playing in Vassal this time. In Sun Tzu, it's when I was putting together the pieces, that really lets you replicate the board game as the board game. And when you lay counters and stack counters and things like that, they stack on top of each other as they would on the board game. So to me, Sun Tzu is great. It gives you that real board game feeling. What you can also do in the Sun Tzu is you can resize counters to make them different sizes. So you kind of end up with what we have here. And let me show you. It's real hard for me to zoom in with the Vassal sometimes the way that I want. So let me just try to zoom in a little bit here. Alright, so what we have, let me move this scenario card over a little bit. Let me just close it out for just a moment here. So for example, just a quick difference between the Vassal and the Sun Tzu, and then we'll play. What I liked about Vassal, this is the first time I played the game with Vassal. When you put, the way that it's programmed here, when I put a counter, an informational counter on top of my unit counter, what it does is it makes that informational counter like small and then sticks it in the corner. For example, here looking at this unit in C2, I've got my infantry counter, but then the decoys on top of it's right up here in the corner. So I can see all my combat stats, but I know that he's been concealed. He's marked with concealment, and then I can just pull it off. For example, if I mark him with suppression, it puts suppression up in the little corner here. only covers up that first level of morale. You don't need it because you're now suppressed, but I can still see all the valid combat data without it being covered, the whole thing covered up by this chit. Great. Great, great, great. And it made me think that if I go back and rework on the Sun Tzu module, try and figure out how I can resize those different markers so that I can have a similar effect. But I just thought this was great. So as I was playing through, I was like, wow, I have a whole new respect for what you can do in Vassal. So it's hard for me to say which system I like better. They both have their benefits. But when I played, this is what I played with. So let's take a look at the scenario. So first of all, in the Vassal, what's nice too is they have all the scenario cards built in. Has up here the map layout, so it tells you which map number, the positioning of the maps, and we don't lay the maps down horizontally. They're put in vertical columns, whereas here they're, on the scenario card they're laid down horizontally. It doesn't hurt play, so you still make it work. It has your turn tracker, so I've got 7 turns according to the information here. Here's a little story background behind the scenario that you'll run, a little historical background. You will also be told what units you have to place. I've gone ahead and placed units. I just put them on the board. I'm not really considering tactics and things, remembering a little bit about my match this weekend. But here, when you start Vassal, all of your tokens, all your counters will be stacked here for you waiting. So all you have to do is start placing them, which is nice. Also on your card, after you're told what units you have, there'll be little notes that you need, such as set up all American units, all American units, the setup. They set up anywhere on board 10. So here's board 10, so I know I can place my Americans anywhere on this board. When I first did this scenario number 2, I thought it would make sense that they would enter from the bottom part of the map and have to move up. But since I'm on a time limit, after playing through, we kind of talked about it, and it would have been fine to have just started all my units right up here. That way I didn't have to spend one turn moving everybody up. So placement sometimes is very important. Also placement behind some cover, behind the hedges, and we'll talk a little bit more about hedges. Then the German player also is given his units that he can place, and he's also given some decoys here, which is awesome. Decoys have turned out to be phenomenal. I don't see how people would play without them. I know some people think they're an annoyance and just get rid of the decoys, but actually, wow, they are a game changer. Now, being solitaire, you would think that, well, because they're decoys, I know where the decoys are, they won't really affect anything, but actually they affect quite a bit, and we'll explain some of that as we play. Then you have your command points. Now, seeing as how I'm playing solo, I know my German player's got 2 command points, and then the American player had, let's see how many I had. I think I had 5 command points, quite a few command points. Yeah, it's given right here in the middle. My operations range and command points. Command points are great because if you remember to use them, they really can influence the tide of battle. You get to re-roll failed proficiency checks, failed morale checks. You can activate a unit to have it move before your opponent. It can be a game changer. So keep track of that. And that's with this information right here on the card. Oh, let me move the card out of the way. You can't see it behind my pretty face there. But right here, for example, this is information about how the American player needs to set up. The operations range is 2 through 5 and command points 5. And then the Vassal automatically puts those command points there for you to have. Now, before we start running through, just a quick reminder of what the operations range is used for. This is telling you at a minimum how many units you can activate on your turn. At a minimum, so like 3-4 means the German player has to activate a minimum of 3, but can activate up to 4 if he chooses, so 3 or 4. On the flip side, the American player has to activate a minimum of 2 and can activate a maximum up to 5 on his turn. And then you go back and forth activating and doing all your phases. Once everybody has all their units marked as used from doing all their phases, then you progress your turn tracker. So you get quite a bit of action each turn. So that's just kind of the basic reminder there, and we'll talk about the units and the stats on the counters as we play along. So the first thing we look at is up here under the map placement. It states that the German player would set up first. So let's talk a little bit about my setup. Let's go ahead and close that scenario card. What I did was, after reading the mission basically is the American forces have to come up and destroy every single German unit. So what I did was I placed some units in the back, and I got a few units up here up front. And the reason why I have some in the back instead of all of them right up front is because I want to force the American player to have to spend turns traveling through the city to get to the back units. Now the units can retreat or fall back if they needed to, but I still want the American to have to work to get at some of these units and dig them out. So I just kind of spread them out. I've got some of them in the buildings, which provides protection from fire. And then all of them have been placed with a concealment marker. So I've got a couple decoys out here. And then I've got all the units marked with concealment because they are initially hiding in the building. So that concealment, very, very important for protection. And a lot of my dice rolls came down to where I missed by 1 digit, and if they weren't concealed, I would have been able to have hit them. So it's very important. Then, after the German player has placed all his folks, the American player then gets to place his units. And what I did, like I said, was instead of starting at the very bottom and marching all the way up, I've gone ahead and just placed them along this northern hedge here and a couple in the building. Now, I went ahead and put concealment on them. This is kind of a source of debate for some folks, since the Americans are the aggressor and they're coming up, they're not laying an ambush. Then the question becomes, do they really need concealment markers? Well, my thinking is they're sneaking their way up. So they're not, yeah, they're the aggressor and they're moving, but they don't necessarily advertise exactly where they are. So they're going to come up as quietly as possible themselves and find positions before they start making their attack and assault on the city. So the Germans know they're coming, but they don't necessarily know where. So I've gone ahead and placed concealment markers on them as well. Now we'll see as we play along that once they start making actions, those concealment markers will come off because they're revealing their location. And some of the Germans won't be doing anything, so they won't have to reveal their position. So let's pull that scenario card back up. So now that we've got that the German player is set up first, then it's the American player. He gets to move. Now I'm going to leave the board zoomed in a little bit, and I'm going to close out the scenario card. Now you can't see all my units here, but I just have a couple here that are covered up by my picture. But so I'll try to move stuff out of the way here. Let me just move this up. I want you to see dice rolls when we make them. So what I would do is I know that I've got, I might have to remind myself, 2 through 5. So I can minimum of 2, maximum of 5. Now, when you're starting a segment like this, the German player can decide if he wants to use a command point to activate one of his units, or he could spend both command points and activate 2 units to possibly shoot at my units first if he felt the need to. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible, so I'm not going to do that. I'll just use those command points to re-roll fun rolls that I think would make the game exciting. I'll use them because the nice thing is when you recover at the end of a turn, you get all your command points back. So it's okay to use them. It's not like you use it once and it's gone forever. To use them, I like to save them for dice re-rolls like morale and failed proficiency checks. So I'm not going to activate any units. So now I get to decide what units do I want to do what. Now I have here a unit in the building. I got several in the building. I have a couple right up here along the hedgerow, and I'm telling you, you need to suppress units before you start moving. Trust me. Now, as far as activating your unit to do something, what my opponent would usually do is he would sometimes take one of those command points and mark a unit as op fire, so that if I move out into the open, he can shoot at me and he gets a little bit better bonus for hitting my unit that's moved. But I didn't do that. Now, the thing is, when you move and your enemy can take opportunity fire, if your enemy units are not suppressed, I mean, it's deadly. It's very hard to charge units that have not been suppressed, and we talked a lot about that in our last video. So what I want to do is, before I start moving up, I'm actually going to try and suppress a couple of these units right here. Now, if I was not playing solo, I wouldn't know that this was a decoy. I might even think that there's a German unit actually hiding in the tree, and I might want to reveal him before I start moving up. But I'm going to just go with the fact I know he's a decoy, so I'm not going to worry about him. So I'm going to try and suppress, say, a guy here in the building. Now, the next thing you got to do then, obviously, is decide what unit do you want to do something with. So I've got right here in the building, I have a machine gun unit that I'm going to go ahead and activate. Now, you have to think a little bit about line of sight, and I have to check and just see, can I even hit this building? Now, when you check line of sight, you go from the center hex, there's these little circles, and you go from the center dot of your hex to the center dot of the target hex. And if you touch any like trees and brushes or building, your line of sight will be blocked. Now, depending on who you play with and how, courtesy or not courtesy, but just depending on how you and your partner agree, some games have it where if you check line of sight and it turns out to be blocked, then that unit is counted as fired. That way you're not just willy-nilly checking line of sight whenever you want. We had it worked out where if it looked close, we would check as a courtesy, just say, well, okay, it turns out you can't. Go ahead and pick a different target. But I'm going to go ahead and just check for line of sight from my machine gun unit to this house right here. So I'm going to click my check line of sight option and drag from that hex up, and it shows that there's a range of 3. And what I was looking to see was, does it hit any artwork on the hex? Some games, the artwork that covers the center dot means the entire hex is counted as that obstacle. Fortunately for the Band of Brothers here, the line of sight, it does not count that way. It actually has to touch the artwork, and it does not touch the artwork of the building, so I have line of sight through there, nor does it touch this bush right here. So I have a clear line of sight to the unit, so we can fire. So I'm going to click off of the line of sight. I'm going to move him back into the building. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, you always check morale. Fortunately, because most of these units have a morale of 10, I don't have to worry about rolling to see if they can do an activity. They pass. I know I've read some folks, they thought that that was a horrible idea, the morale, but actually I think it's brilliant, especially as we get to playing. It's also real nerve-wracking when it comes down to the final, you're trying to make pushes and move people up, and then you can't because they're failing morale because they're scared. I mean, it makes sense to me. If you're being shot at, you don't want to move up. You have to muster that courage to go forward. Fortunately, they're all at 10, they're fresh, they're ready, so I don't have to roll. But because he is able to do his activity, then I'm going to right click and choose the mask, which removes his concealment. So now the enemy knows that that is a machine gun, and if they shoot at him, he doesn't get that +1 bonus to defense because they know what he is and where he's at specifically. Alright, so now that I've picked my target, I don't have to make a proficiency check because I'm doing just a standard firing. So what I have to do then is just take a look at my firepower modifiers. So that's the first thing you got to decide, is this opportunity or just standard fire? Well, this is just a standard fire of my operations phase is what we're doing. So I didn't have to move. Now, Assault Team, they can't move and fire anyway, so really I either just move them or shoot with them. I'm just going to shoot with them. So I look at some of my modifiers. First of all, I'm going to look that this unit here is in a brown building. Brown buildings count as wood, and they have a +1 defense, essentially. Buildings get a +1 defense. Stone buildings get +2. So, and those are these gray buildings. So since it's wooden, he gets +1 defense, if you will. It's a die roll modifier. So I get +1 for being in woods, or not woods, being in the building, and then +1 because he's got that concealment marker. So he's hiding in the building, so he's a little bit harder to hit. So what I have to do is apply that. I have an 8 normally, so I've seen people do this a couple of ways. Either you just roll the dice and then add 2, because it's a die roll modifier, or what some folks do is they just automatically subtract it from the firepower, and then you just know, okay, I have to roll 6 or less to hit. I've gotten used to just subtracting it from the listed firepower number here, this red 8 number, and I know I have to get 6 or less. So let's go ahead and roll that. So I rolled a 2. Outstanding. So machine guns, they spit out a lot of bullets. Now what I have to do, there's a couple things. One, I'll go ahead and remove the concealment. When you successfully attack the hex and you successfully suppress, you get to remove that concealment marker. So I'll go ahead and unmask them. So now other units will have an easier time hitting him. Next thing we have to do is check for casualties. Now this is where it can be very deadly for your opponent, for you. What you do is you take your casualty numbers here and you add them to your dice roll. And if it is less than your firepower number, you inflict casualties. So for example, if I add this 3, that's the first casualty number, and I add it to my dice roll of 2, that is still less than the 6 I needed to hit. That means I inflicted 1 casualty. If I was to add the 7 to the dice roll, which would make it 9, and then I was able to still be under that 6, then I would have inflicted 2 casualties, which would have eliminated that unit altogether. Now, as it stands, there wasn't, any other positive modifiers for me. The unit wasn't moving. I wasn't next to it. That's pretty much all I had. If I had been adjacent to it or some other things, maybe I would have got more positive modifiers. I could have inflicted more casualties, but as it stands, 3 plus 2 is 5. That's less than the 6 I needed to hit, so I inflict 1 casualty. So I'm going to go ahead and flip his counter to the casualty side. So as you see, it reduces his morale just a little bit, but he still retains some of his firepower. He's still pretty strong in all those regards. The other thing you do is he has to become fully suppressed. So let's go fully suppressed. So now that means whenever he's going to make morale checks and things of that nature, he has to roll a 1. So if he wants to fight, move, or anything like that, he's got to roll a 1 for morale. So he's got problems. Plus he's got casualty inflicted. So I mark that machine gun as used. Alright, so we'll just kind of speed through the process here a little bit. But that's the basics of the game right there. And I just got to keep track of how many units I've activated against my operations range and what I have left. So that's 1, and I have to do a minimum of 2. So I'm going to do this unit right here in D1, and he's going to shoot straight up into this building. So what's nice is you don't have to declare all your attacks and actions before you do them. You can kind of look and see how the battlefield is unfolding and make decisions based on that, which is a mistake I made one game where I had several units that I wanted to rush an area, and I thought it would take several units to suppress and then one to finally move up. And so I said, well, all 3 are attacking that hex. Well, the 1 hex, my first unit, did enough damage that the other folks weren't even needed, but since I had pre-committed them, their attacks were just kind of wasted. So you don't have to pre-commit, just do things as they come up. So I'm going to take this unit, and since this guy is fully suppressed, and he has a casualty, there's a chance that I could inflict another casualty and wipe it out, but I'm going to see if I can go ahead and put some suppression on this unit right here. So it's another standard firing operation. I just look at my different modifiers. He is, first of all, I would check my morale, which he passes at a 10. Since he's able to do the action, I'll take the mask off, revealing him as infantry. And I look here in the building, +1 for wood, and then +1 for the decoy, or for concealment, so that's 2 penalty. I have firepower of 6, so that means I'd have to roll a 4 or less to hit. So I roll my die 10, and I miss. So we'll mark him as used. So that was quick. He shot, missed, nothing happened. Let's see here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this unit. We'll go ahead and try and fire up here as well. Now, because I think it'll be fine, because if you try to fire along the spine of a hedge, that blocks line of sight. But since it's not quite along the spine, let's just check line of sight just to verify. Yeah, it misses that spine. Now, if I had tried to shoot, say, this unit, my line of sight would have been blocked by the hedge. So I'm going to go ahead and just shoot on up here. So it passes morale. We're going to unmask it. And the numbers are the same. As you start using the same numbers often, you start to get kind of used to what it is you need to have to succeed, and you memorize them. So nothing really changed from this guy, just shifted over 1. So it's still 1 for the wood building, 1 for concealment, and I need a 4 or less to hit. I roll a 2. Now, when I add that casualty marker of 3 and add that to the 2, that's greater than the 4 that I needed to hit. So I don't inflict a casualty, but I do inflict 1 level of suppression. So I'm going to go ahead and put suppression suppressed, and he's now revealed, so I'll get rid of the mask and mark him as used. Oh, that's the other problem I got, it is sometimes I'm clicking mask instead of marked used. Alright, so, and this is real important. Shooting a unit just to remove the concealment or to see if it's a dummy unit or not has been real important, because your decoys, they force morale checks. If you move out in the open of a unit that's a decoy, basically that unit acts as a unit, like a real unit, for a lot of your different situations that come up. So it's good to shoot at anything that's marked as a decoy or concealment just to remove that concealment or to verify if it's a decoy, because this will mess you up in the game. And as I was playing, I found out sometimes I was like really concerned, like, gee whiz, is that really a decoy unit, or is that a real German unit that can hurt me? And that sometimes held up my movement, because I was like, well, I'm not going to attack that tree. If there's a real German unit in it, it's going to get opportunity fire and be able to attack me and hurt me, but I don't know if it's a decoy or not. So I would want to put suppression on it to reveal it as a unit or not, and then if I hit that hex and it is a decoy, once I remove the mask, if you will, I can tell if it's a decoy. He just removes it off the board. So you have to pretty much get adjacent to it to reveal it as a decoy or not. Basically what I'm saying is it's important to remove that. As the attacker and your enemy has decoys out there, you need to check everything. Shoot at everything to try and remove those off the board. So what I will do then is I want to put 1 more level of suppression on this guy before I start moving units up, simply because he's still effective. I mean, a 5 will make some of the things he has to check for a little more difficult for him, but since suppression is reduced by 1 level at the end of each recovery phase, at the end of the turn essentially, he'll go back to full strength. But if I can get him at red suppression, even after our recovery phase, he'll still have yellow suppression, and it will still be a little bit harder for him to do stuff at the start of the next turn. So I want to put one more level of suppression on him if I can. And I'm going to do that with this unit right over here in B1 of map 10. Now, this guy has a morale of 9, which means I have to roll. If you got a 10, you automatically pass your morale phase, but they're a little bit wounded. Now, you also notice this guy has a casualty. He's flipped to his casualty side at the start of the mission. In the little story of the scenario card, what it's saying is, as the airborne units were gathering themselves and making their advances, they sometimes had to find, they just came across people and units that were kind of lost and scattered. And so this is representing units that are kind of lost and scattered, and we're just pulling them into the fold. So they're not at their full combat effectiveness. So I'm going to roll to see if he can even act. So I need a 9 or less. I get a 7, so he can act. Now you might say, gee, even a 9, that's pretty much a pass. When I first played this scenario, my very first turn with both of those casualty units, they both failed morale and were stuck way at the back of the map, and it took them a full turn before they even wanted to move forward. So even 1 point of morale loss is very important, so that's why suppression is key. So he can fire, so I'm going to go ahead and mark him, remove his mask. He is going to fire into this unit, and the same modifiers. 1 for being in a building, but look, he's no longer concealed, so really I've only got a 1 penalty against my firepower, so I need a 5 or less, and I rolled a 10. 10 is an auto miss. So even if you had like a lot of positive modifiers, a 10 is a miss. So I've used 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 units so far. We're going to see these guys right here. Neither one of them can shoot at that hex because they've got the well, he might be able to. Let's see. Let's check line of sight here. Okay, I can shoot because I don't go along that hex side of hedges, but this guy, he can't shoot up here because he does go along that row of hedge. Like he hits the spine, they call it. So I'm going to have this unit right down here fire. So he passes morale, so I'll take his mask off. Mask. And I look at his modifiers. -1 because he's in a building, so I need a 5 or less. Roll. I roll a 7. So he misses. He fires. He just wasn't very accurate. So I mark him as used. That's my 5 for this turn. German player. Let's double check our scenario card. They move. He can activate down here according to this. You might not be able to read it. It's probably still kind of small. Let me zoom in. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can read some of the details. The more I zoom in, the more blurry it gets, so zooming in still might not help you too much. But if you can read here, for the German player, operations range is 3 to 4, and the American player was operations range 2 through 5. So I'm going to try and move, or at least activate, 3 or 4 soldiers here according to the scenario card. Now, what I could do, because this guy here has been fully suppressed and he's already got a casualty, since he's right here at the front line, he knows he's not going to last long in his position. So what I could do is opt to move him and do a retreat. Now, to do anything with him, I had to make a morale check first of all, but I have to make the decision, do I want to retreat? If you voluntarily retreat, you get a dice roll modifier of -4 to your dice roll, just because you're leaving the fray. If I wanted to go forward into battle, I wouldn't get any kind of bonus, but since I'm retreating, these guys are scared, it's easier for them to retreat. So what I would do, the only unfortunate thing with that is when you move, your opponent can trigger what's called opportunity fire. And what I would have to do is look and see if I have any units that I could trigger for opportunity fire if he retreats. So if I moved into, say, this building, let's just say, I would use, first of all, 2 movement points because moving, let's just check, yeah, the movement for infantry is 2, so just to move from building to within building is 2 movement points, and infantry get 5 movement points. What I would have to do is my opponent would then say, hey, let me see if I can trigger some opportunity fire here. It's possible. Now, if I was going to do that, I would check from this guy here. Now, this unit in this building could not do opportunity fire simply because he has no line of sight. His line of sight thread runs through this part of the building, so he can't see this part of the building. Now, I do have a unit right here. Now, my line of sight thread has a clear line of sight to this building right back here, but he's marked used. That's okay. If I put a command point on him, then that will let him do what's called a final opportunity fire. So he's, basically the command point will let him attempt to shoot. Doesn't mean he hits or succeeds, but a command point will let him attempt that shot. And once I put a command point on him, he can't do anything else the rest of that turn, like if somebody else wanted to do a command, opportunity fire. Since I already put a command point on him, he's already, had his command point used. So let's just see, let's try that out. Let's try it out. Let's say the German player says, well, I don't want to lose a guy right away. Let's back him up a little bit. So he starts here, he moves here. The American player says, hold on, I'm going to attempt opportunity fire. What I do is I gotta open my scenario card and I pull down one of my command points, open my stack, I put a command point here indicating that he is acting. Now, when you do opportunity fire, there's a couple other situations that will come up that we'll talk about where you have to make what's called a proficiency check. When you're doing something that's a little bit outside the normal, we have to see if your training, the training of your unit, will allow you to do this activity. And final opportunity fire is one of those things that we have to check. So let's look at our stack. If I hover my mouse, it'll pull up a little blow up of my counters, and I can see the stats on that counter. It's probably really small here on the screen. So let me just pull this marker off. So right here, firepower is the first number, the red 6. The second number, that's your movement. And this 2, that's your proficiency. What you do is you subtract that proficiency from your morale, and then that's your proficiency. You have to roll under that number to see if you can do that activity. So as you can see, when you're suppressed, it can affect a lot of things you want to do. So I don't have any suppression. My proficiency is a 2. So in order for me to do an opportunity fire at this guy, I have to roll 8 or less just to see if I can attempt that action. So I rolled a 4. So I'm going to go ahead and take a shot at this unit. Now, there's going to be some other modifiers here that we look at. When your target is moving and you're doing opportunity fire, then we get some modifiers that we normally don't get. So looking at player aid, first I'm going to look here, there's a section for moving. If your target is moving, if they're in the open, you get certain modifiers, but if they're undercover, so it says here, for example, not in the open and range is less than 8. Well, he's not in the open and his range is less than 8 hexes away, so I get to subtract 1 from my dice roll modifier for firepower. That's good. You want minuses. So that means when you roll your dice, you subtract from your roll what you got. The other penalties, though, I got to keep in mind is because I'm doing final opportunity fire, there's a positive +2 modifier to my firepower. So I add that to the dice roll. So -1 and +2, it cancels out my -1, so I'm left at +1, a penalty of +1. The other thing I have to look at is his terrain. He's in that wood building, which is a +1 bonus as well. So +2 for the final opportunity fire plus 1 for the building, minus 1 because the target is moving. I have a dice roll modifier of plus 2. So if I just take a look at my firepower of 6 and I have a penalty of 2, like I said, I'm the subtraction kind of guy. So I know in order to hit, I have to roll a 4 or less to hit. So I roll my die 10. I rolled a 2. So why would I even want to roll? Here's a reason why. Even though a unit, like here this German unit, is fully suppressed, because I've hit that hex, he cannot become any more suppressed. That red suppressed is as good as you can get. So why would we attempt it? To try and inflict another casualty. He would add a 3 to my roll. So I would go 3 plus 2 is 5, but I needed a 4 to hit. But if I had rolled a 1, then 1 plus his 3 for casualty, that would have been a 4, which is equal to the firepower that my unit had. That technically would have inflicted another casualty, and I could have removed that unit from the board. So it's not a bad idea to try some opportunity firing to see if you can take somebody out. You can't suppress them anymore, but if you can remove them, hey, why not? Plus, I didn't really lose anything for trying it, and I'm going to get the command point back at the end of the turn. So, wasn't bad. But anyway, now the German player can continue moving. So 1, 2 for the building, 1 to move out into the open. Now here, he's got some choices here. If he just continues moving out in the open, or if he moves along the road, roads have a special movement thing where if you move 2 hexes, you get a third one free. They move at what's called 2/3 on a road. So I use 2 to get here, 1 to get out in the open. That's 3 of my 5. 4 because I'm starting on the road. You had to start on the road to get the benefit as we see it. And then I'll move 1 more hex back. So that's all 5 movement points, 2 of them on the road. But since I'm on the road, I get a third movement free. We're just going to move him back 1 more hex, just for the heck of it. And because that was a move action, here's something else that we have with the move action. Because it's a move action, he can check to see if he is in line of sight of anybody, any enemy, and if he's not, he can conceal himself again. So it's not a bad idea to run away sometimes. So what I'm going to do is check line of sight, but I honestly think we're good. Well, what's funny about this is looking at my line of sight, since I'm at the hedge, that doesn't block passes by this building. So a person could say that these little tiny shrubs are decorative and that there's no way they would block line of sight because they're little tiny decorative shrubs. Whereas if you had like these big bushes, so there could be some debate between folks as to, what actually is blocking and what's not blocking. I'm going to be nice and say this little shrub blocks line of sight. So a lot of confusion, chaos going on. So some shrubbery has masked this unit. He can go ahead and put his concealment marker back on. Now you wouldn't do that for like a route or anything of that nature, just at the end of a move. So it's quite possible that because he's out in the open, if I had a American unit that somehow popped up back in here somewhere and could see him in full view, that he would lose that decoy marker. So it is quite possible that through a process of folks moving throughout their turn, you could have units become concealed and unconcealed. But fortunately, it's not like that happens all the time. It's kind of rare that you would see a situation where somebody throughout the course of one turn, just by movement alone, would have to be concealed and unconcealed. And if you have to mark that as such here in this game, it's not a hassle. You just right click and fix it. I could see on the face-to-face game, having to manipulate all these markers might be a pain, but for here, it's not too bad. And my friend and I, we talked a lot about the decoy markers and how in this game what's nice is you don't have to worry about moving your stack and then lifting your conceal marker to see what's under it and do it all stealthily to keep your face-to-face opponent knowing what you were looking at. Because when I have this concealed this way, I can see what it is because it's my piece, but what my opponent sees is just a big fat conceal marker like this. Has absolutely no idea what's under it. So yeah, mark your units as concealed when you can. It's not a hassle. Reveal them, unreveal them, whatever. Just mark them and move on. Alright, so this guy is done. So I'm going to mark him as used. Now I get a couple more to do. What did I say I was? 3 to 4? Yeah, 3 to 4 that I can do. Now, with these the decoys, because you treat them as a unit, here's how I've seen these referred to on some of the forums. Is think of the decoys, don't think of them as just being shadows or where we think people are. You can also think of these as they very well could be like one person who's not necessarily a combat unit, but this could be a guy with binoculars who is spying, which is why they're able to, see things, act as spotters. So they're not necessarily a combat unit, but it is actually enough of a representative force that they can control the battlefield. So you can move them. You can actually move your decoy markers. You can place orders on them, if you will. And that's a great way to fake your opponent out. Like when we played Scenario 6 and my friend was moving his pieces up, I actually thought he was purposefully moving decoys up to force me to use my command points to do opportunity firing. Turned out he was actually moving units up, but I was like, no, I'm going to save my command points for real units. But you can use those to your advantage. Fake your opponent out. But for the purpose of this, I'm just going to leave this decoy unit alone. And yeah, so let's get back. So you can do things with your decoy units. I'm just not going to. Like, for example, what you could do is say, oh, I'm going to have him do something. Let me make a morale check to see if he can do it. Oh, he failed morale. Well, your opponent can see your dice roll and know that a 2, if he fails a 2, and you say, oh, he did his thing, I guess he can't do anything. Well, he's got no suppression on him, so 2 is probably not a way to fake your opponent out by going, oh, he failed morale, he can't move. But what you could do is say, like, here's a good one. Let's see if I can designate for op fire. This is what I saw my buddy do. What he did sometimes was put his decoys and marked them for opportunity fire. So that got me scared. Oh shoot, that means if I move up to assault, there's a chance that he can shoot at me and get a bonus for hitting because he's prepared for me to charge. So if I move one of these units up, he can shoot at me. So very good tactic. It scared me a lot of times. I then had to divert resources to try and reveal that unit before I could move forward. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to mark him as op fire. I've got one guy left. This guy here, we're going to wait since he's got morale 5. No, we'll go ahead and do something with him. Now, before he can do anything, before you even think about moving him, shooting with him, whatever, he's got to make a morale check. He's suppressed by 1 level, so he needs to roll a 5 or less. Normally, I probably wouldn't have used him because there's a chance of failure, and I've got fresh units just waiting to do stuff. But just for time's sake, we'll go ahead and have him do something. So I roll a die 10. He rolls an 8. Since he failed morale, he doesn't get to do anything, but he does get marked as used. So failing morale kind of sucks. That's why I always try to suppress everybody that I can. Even if it's 1 level for that turn, that'll prevent him from doing something. So that's, let's see, 1 unit, 2 units, 3, I got 1 more. I'm going to go ahead and have, let's see what my range is. He got a range of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm going to have this guy up in the church. He's going to fire straight down at this infantry unit here, just to say. So he passes morale, so we know he can shoot. So he'll take his concealment off. He's now revealed his position. And we have to look at our firepower. Now, in this particular scenario, we're dealing like with second line infantry. So these are kind of like, I don't know, not as highly trained. So he has a firepower of 4 starting out. So I got to look at my modifiers for firepower. Since it's a standard attack, there's no proficiency check. So let's just look at what we got. This guy is behind the hedge, and hedgerow. Oh. Well, it says here hedges are just kind of a strange beast. It says here though that the firepower modifier is +2 to fire passing through the hedgerow unless the target is both moving and adjacent to the firer. So since I am behind the hedge, I'm not moving and I'm not adjacent to the firer, then I'm going to go with the +1 or +2 modifier to fire. Now, if I'm wrong, because hedges are kind of a pain, someone can correct me on that. So automatically I got +2 modifier for the hedges. Since I'm not concealed because I've already revealed myself, I don't get that concealment bonus. So I'm not, moving or anything else like that. That's it. So what I'm going to do is compare my 2 penalty with his 4. I subtract that 2 from his 4. I need a 1 or a 2 to hit, essentially. So I roll. He rolls a 9, so the German fails. So I'm going to mark him as used. So that's my 4 units for that particular part of the turn. Now, as far as the command points go, you cannot use command points to reroll missed firepower. Trust me, that would be nice, because that would help a lot. So no command points used there. What I could have done is this unit here that failed morale in order to attack, I could have used a command point to reroll that because that was a morale check, but I chose not to. So what I'm going to do then is come back to the American side, and I still have some units left to activate. So he's used. I've got 4 left. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 left to do something. Alright, so what I'm going to do is with this unit right here, I'm going to shoot at the tree. Because not knowing that that's a real unit, I see a unit marked for op fire. Well, before I assault the tree, I want to get some suppression on here to make it even harder for him to op fire. So, first of all, I pass morale. So I remove my mask, I reveal my unit, and I just look at my modifiers. He's not moving, I'm not moving, so for the trees, I believe trees are just a fire modifier +1, so a penalty of +1. That's it. So I'm not doing opportunity fire or anything like that, or assault, so I just got +1 for the, and then +1 because he's concealed. Okay, so 2. So compare that with my firepower 6. I need a 4 or less to hit, so I roll my die 10, and I roll a 9. So he misses. So that's 1. Well, let's see here. I'm going to continue thinking I don't know what this guy is, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same attack with this guy. So I'm going to remove the mask. I look at my modifiers. 1 for concealment, 1 for the tree. I need a 4. I roll an 8. Dang, I'm not doing good. Alright, so that's my second used unit. I've got to move up. I have got to move up. So I'm going to take this unit down here, one of my casualty units. So before he does anything, we're going to roll. I need basically if I roll 10, he can't move. He can act. Since I'm taking him out, I'm going to remove his mask. Now, what I want to do, I'm going to move him up 1. Now, remember we do have stacking limits. I can put 2 infantry. 1 infantry, 1 weapon team, or 2 infantry. So I'm going to put 2 infantry here. The only reason why I personally hate stacking is you attack the hex, not the unit. So if this guy was a real unit and he did fire down, he would make 1 attack roll and apply that against both units. So it's a possibility you could get hurt really bad. But I move him up. Now, if the German player really had a unit here, he could say at that point, you know, I'm going to do an opportunity fire because he's marked for opportunity. But what I do with this guy is because before I assault, I want to try and suppress him a little bit. I'm going to fire. Now, because I moved, that makes this an assault. If you move and then shoot, that's an assault and there's a penalty for that. So let's take a look at the penalties. Now, for that, you also had to make a proficiency check because what you had to do is check to see if your men are trained well enough to move and shoot. So to do a proficiency check, there's no modifiers on the assault for proficiency. So you just take your proficiency number, subtract that from your morale. So I'm going to go 9 minus 2. I need a 7 or less in order to conduct assault fire. So I roll my die 10. I roll a 10. So the Americans aren't doing the good this time around. So I have to mark this guy as used. So if you attempt something and fail the proficiency, you're done. Basically, your men just said, I'm done. So I moved him up 1. So both units on that stack, well, you know, you can't even see. So I moved him up, I marked him as used. Both units on that stack have been marked as used. So they're essentially done. They're going to sit out the fight. And I look, I've got 1 unit over here that hasn't done anything yet. So we're going to move him up. So he passes morale. He's going to activate. So I take his mask off. And I gotta move him up. So I'm going to go 1. Now, the German player at this point could say, hey, I'm going to shoot at you. He might even shoot with this guy if it has line of sight. Let's just check line of sight. No. Now, it might be hard to see on the screen here, but his line of sight thread here in this square F8, let's see if you can see my mouse pointer move around. Yeah. It passes through the building. That technically blocks line of sight. So I could also check from this tree. Now, if you notice, when you're doing line of sight, it partially makes your units transparent. So this might be a little hard to see. I'll move it up here. But the line of sight thread passes through these bushes. So his line of sight is blocked from this unit in the tree. Now if I check from that German unit, it passes through the bushes of this hex here. So technically, the only person who has line of sight is this unit right over here, this German unit. I'm going to go ahead, just for fun, for illustration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and put him as opportunity fire. Now because he's already been marked as used, this is going to be kind of like final opportunity fire. You also get final opportunity fire when someone is charging you and they get into the hex next to you, but you can spend a command point and do final opportunity fire on a used unit, and you can shoot beyond 1 hex away. So you gotta use a command point though. So I'm going to find my command points. Where did I hide my German command points? Ooh, I hid them somewhere. Uh-oh. Do they really want to do that? Yeah, I don't see them. Where did I put my Oh, well. I hid my German command point somewhere. Alright, let me see if I can pull up the counters and find other. Oh, command points. German. Offboard artillery. Uh-oh. Move for tanks. Op fire used. Oh no. Oh, where did CPs? Alright, we'll do that. There they are. I had to find them. So what I'm going to do, because I lost my command points from the starting scenario card. So what I'm going to do is German, yeah. I'm going to take a command point and I'm going to put it down here on this guy. Bing. He gets a command point. Now all that does is activate him. That doesn't mean he successfully attacks. He just gets activated to see if he can attack. So now we get to look at some modifiers here. Oh, I didn't move my guy yet. So I move him up. I go 1 for crossing over a hedge, and then 1 to move into the square. So that takes 2. So 1, 2. I'm up in this road hex now. My opponent says stop. I'm going to do opportunity fire. I get my command point. Now I have to do a proficiency check. So to do final op fire is a proficiency check. But there are some modifiers to this that might make your proficiency a little bit better. First, we check to see if your target is out in the open. That's a -1. Is your target adjacent? Then that would be a minus. And then are they marked for op fire? So they're not marked for op fire. They're not marked adjacent. So he gets a -1. If I had moved up here, for instance, which we'll do, because I was going to say I'm going to pretend that this unit is... Oh wait, I was doing the wrong unit. This one here. Never mind. I forgot. I thought I hadn't moved him. Alright, so I moved this guy up. That's a completely different scenario. So I moved this unit up. He's out in the open. That's when my opponent declared the opportunity fire. So I'm not adjacent. So I get -1 to my proficiency check because this unit is out in the open. So I'm just trying to move his command marker so we can look at the marker here. He has a proficiency of 4. Oh, snap. Why is that a big deal? Because you subtract that proficiency from your morale, and that's what you have to roll in order to see if you attempt the action. So 4 -1, because the target is in the open, that means a proficiency check of 3. Subtract that from my morale of 5. I need to roll a 2 or less just to do the fire. So I roll a 9, and he fails opportunity fire. He's done. So that would mean this unit would be safe to move up another hex. Line of sight is still blocked by this building from everybody else. Oh, except possibly by this unit here. So if I had a real unit up in this last building, H6, I have a clear line of sight because your shrubbery and stuff in your hex doesn't count, just in the target. There's some shrubbery here, but because it runs along this hex spine and doesn't really follow, bleed over, this is considered a clear shot. If I had a real unit here, he could fire. But I'm gonna keep moving my American unit though. So I did 2 to move here, 3, and it's 2 to move into the building. So 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movement points to get into the building. Now what do I do? Well, because I moved, I could see if I can get shot at by anybody else. Line of sight. Technically I could get shot at by this unit here. Hex to hex. This doesn't block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this German unit, he's going to do op fire. Now he can do op fire and it would be opportunity fire because he's not marked as used. It won't be final opportunity fire. So he'll still make a proficiency check, but he'll get another little bonus. So first of all, I check morale. He can do it. He passes morale. Well, proficiency. Let's check here. He's got 4. Target is not in the open, so he doesn't get that bonus. Oh, target's not adjacent, and he's not marked opportunity fire. So now we're going to make that proficiency check. Not morale check, proficiency check. So I get penalty of 4. So 4 from 10. I need a 6 or less in order to see if I fire. I rolled a 5. This unit can do it. However, yeah, he can do it. So I'm going to reveal, unmask him, because he's now revealed his position, and he's going to look at his firepower modifiers now. So my opponent is in a building, so that's 1 for the wood building. Because he moved, but he's not in the open, that's a -1. So far I had a -1 for a moving target, and then +1 because he's in the building. So that bonus and that penalty cancel out. But because he's doing, well, it's not final opportunity fire, it's just opportunity fire. Basically, I'm just looking at my player aid of firepower modifiers. I'm not marked as concealed or anything like that. That's it. I just did a straight up firepower roll of 4. This German unit has a 4. So he gets to shoot. Maybe he'll put some suppression. So I roll a die 10. I roll a 6. He misses. He gets marked as used. Now, if he had failed the proficiency check for op fire, he would not have been marked used. But because he passed, and then he failed the fire assault, he gets put, or not the fire assault, but fails that opportunity fire, he gets marked as used. So the German player won't be able to use him in the upcoming. Now, that was the interruption to opportunity fire. The American player, though, he has an option. He can do an assault fire if he wants. Since he just got done moving, and I have a couple targets, I've got a guy across the street, I've got a fresh unit right up here, and I have a decoy unit in this tree that's holding my people up. I can shoot. Shooting at this unit here would be okay to try and do because I might inflict more suppression, which would be great. I could shoot here and reveal this as an actual decoy or not, so that these guys would be safe to move up because they don't know that it's just a decoy. So what I'm going to do is fire at this decoy in the tree. So first of all, it's assault fire, so I have to make a proficiency check. There's no modifiers for assault fire, so I take proficiency of 2, subtract it from my 10, that gives me 8. Roll a die 10, I roll a 2, I can op fire. Now I look at my firepower modifiers. I have a 6, I have a penalty of 1 for the tree and 1 for concealment, that's 2. I need a 4 or less. I roll a die 10, I roll a 2 again. So we have successfully hit the tree, and that would reveal the unit, but since it is actually a decoy, I reveal that as a decoy. I can remove that now from the board. So I'm going to hit delete. And he is now used. And that's all my units. So now we'll take a look at the German unit. Now the German units, he got to activate fewer units than my side, but since all my folks have been used, it's perfectly okay to just say, alright, go ahead and now take the actions for all your other German players. Because I've got nobody to, activate left. Everybody's been used and activated. They sure have. So, just for grins, we're going to mark op fire. No, we're not. No, we're not. No. We're going to shoot. Why not? So this German says, hey, I'm going to fire. I'm going to fire at this guy. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's within range of 6. We're going to look at firepower modifiers because he passes morale. We unmask him because he's now revealed his position. And firepower modifiers are 2 for the hedge. I think when we played it, we just did 1 for hedge. because that's a pretty big modifier for the hedgerow. I think we just did it as 1. I'll just go with 1 because that seems like quite a bit. I mean, a building only gives 1, and some bushes shouldn't give too much more than that. But you know, still, I'm just looking here. It does actually say 2 though, but I think we were using 1, so I'll just go with 1 because that's what I'm used to. So 1 for the hedge. That's it. He's not concealed or anything else. So I have to roll a 3 because I have a firepower 4. So I roll a 10. 10 is a miss. So used. This decoy, because it is a decoy, can't actually do anything. I'm going to right click. I'm going to designate him for op fire. So that would, my opponent might say, oh, well, if you're designating him as op fire and not actually shooting with him, he might be a decoy. But op fire is a good valid thing to put people on because you actually get some good bonuses for shooting them, people who move. Actually, I think sometimes it's easier to shoot people who are moving than people, well, I guess that makes sense. If you're moving, you're a little bit easier to hit because you're not using your surrounding coverings as good as if you're stationary and dig in. So using op fire is not a bad idea. At the end of the turn though, when everybody's marked moved and not moving, putting him as op fire might be a little weird, but just for time's sake, op fire. And you could also just simply say, I'm done. Everybody's where I want them to be. I have no one to move. We're fine. So with that, we can then check for morale. Well, the routing phase, we have to check morale for routing. This is important because later on as we progress, this could affect potentially melee combat, who stays in your area of operations, who stays next to you. I'm just looking around the board to see if anybody here needs to check for morale. There are certain conditions that will trigger a route check. So we'll just take a look and see if I have met any of those. 1, you need to be stacked with an enemy unit. So let's say you moved up and you're going to do a melee assault. You would check to see if your route beforehand. Are you still brave enough to assault them even though you're, right next to them? Are you just adjacent to a unit that's not in melee? Units that are in the open with no positive terrain modifiers and within 5 hexes and line of sight of an enemy unit not in melee. So for example, that's why units, these decoy markers, they force route checks. So just thinking an enemy is there is sometimes enough to trigger people to retreat. So since I got rid of that route marker, I'm looking, these guys are in cover. Plus, even if they were forced for a route check, they have a morale of 10, they automatically passed. So nobody here has to make a route check. Everybody's still brave. Even though this guy got fully suppressed and injured, because he is out of sight of all enemy units, he's fine right where he's at. So that's pretty much it. We set up, we did our operations, we went back and forth activating units, then we checked for route. Now if we had any enemy units stacked together with a friendly of yours, we would check for melee combat, which is deadly. I have nobody in melee. We would then do the recovery phase now, which there is a button right up top here in the vassal module. It says recovery, which is nice because it removes like your used markers, automatically reduces your suppression by 1 level, which is one reason why it's okay to retreat. Get rid of some suppression so you're ready to come back. So we'll hit recovery. That removes op fire. The only markers it doesn't get rid of are your command points. So take your command points off to the side. Now, one thing I didn't do was use my command points on some of my failed proficiency checks and things of that nature. Just just to kind of get going. But just remember, as you play, every morale check and thing of that nature, you can use one of your command points and re-roll to see if you can keep going. And it's a good idea to use them because during that recovery phase, you get all your command points back. So get your command points back. That's pretty much how your turns go. The only thing that we didn't do was what it would be like to try and assault somebody. Let's see how that works. So I'm taking this totally out of context of a full game now, and I'm just going to illustrate what it would look like to charge up to somebody and how deadly that can be, and why you might want to suppress them a little bit before you move up there. First of all, let's just say I've got this German unit right here in this building. I've got a whole bunch of infantry that want to come up. If I just charge them now, I'm going to ignore these other folks who have the opportunity fire. I'm just going to ignore them. I'm going to say he's all by himself, but he's in this building. So I move up. Now, because I've moved adjacent to him, he can do final opportunity fire, which is, well, op fire. If I was marked as used, he would be final opportunity fire. It's a little more tricky to pull off final opportunity fire to be successful because you've already, done some action. But because it's a fresh unit that hasn't done anything, he's even more deadly. So I move up into the open, and he says, I'm going to opportunity fire you. First, he makes a morale check, well, proficiency check, to see if he can do opportunity fire. His proficiency is 4. Let's look at some of his bonuses here. I get a -1 to proficiency because I'm in the open, and -1 because I'm adjacent. That brings his proficiency from 4 down to 2. 2 from his morale of 10 means I need an 8 or less to attack him to see if I can inflict some casualties. So I roll my die. I roll a 9. So this guy fails his proficiency check, so this American unit can just stroll on in there now. Okay, but that's not what we wanted to have happen. Let's just roll until he passes. Okay, so let's say I rolled a 5. Well, 5 is better than the 8 that I needed, so I can now actually shoot at this American unit and see if I can repel them and keep them from assaulting me. So let's look at my modifiers for firepower. Now here's where it gets awesome. Why you need to suppress people. When you're doing the firepower now, let's look at the modifiers. 1, when your opponent is adjacent, you get a -3 to your dice roll. Okay, so that's in your favor. -3 because they're adjacent to you. Then, when they're open, in the open and less than 4 hexes away, that's -4 additional bonus to hit. So now I'm looking at basically +7 to my firepower. Okay, it's -7 from your dice roll, or some people invert it and then say +7 to their firepower. So I hit on an 11 or less. That means I'm guaranteed to hit them. Now let's look at the other stuff. That's it. Look at that, -7, right? So I roll my die. I want to roll low, so I roll an 8. So 8 is less than 11, so I did hit and I did inflict some suppression. So let's just take a look at that situation. So if I then put suppression, now in order for me to continue advancing on the German position, I have to make a morale check, because that kind of forces me to stop, check and see if I'm still willing to advance. So I roll my die 10, I roll a 3, I then could advance. If I had failed my morale check, I would have had to have marked him as used, and he would stop right there in the open. Bad place to be. So let's look at this a little bit worse. Let's roll again. Let's say my German rolled and got a 2. Okay, so I needed an 11 to hit, and I rolled a 2. Well, I got to look at my casualties here. 4 plus 2 is a 6. Well, that's less than his 11, so I'm guaranteed to have taken 1 casualty. So let's reverse it. If I take 8, my second casualty marker, 8 plus the 2 dice roll, that's 10. That is also less than the 11 firepower he had. That means this unit theoretically could have got wiped out in one attack roll. So why was the suppression important to that? If he was suppressed, it's possible he could have failed the proficiency check and not have even made that assault fire or that, opportunity fire. So attacking a fresh unit is kind of crappy. Now, if I had failed my morale check, here, let me remove that used. Let's say in order to not stay in the open, like I really want to advance into this hex, I could spend a command point and re-roll that morale to see if I keep going. Where's that command point? Put it on my marker. Stack. So I'm going to re-roll that 6. So if I rolled a 3, I can continue moving. So you might have to watch that segment a couple times to see all the things I just talked about. But that's assaulting a fresh unit. That's if I was suppressed, not suppressed. That's if I took 2 casualties and got wiped out. Or here I didn't take any casualties, just 1 level of suppression. Failed my roll, used the command point, re-rolled, and now I'm in the square with my German unit. So I got my German unit, American unit. They would be able to do melee. Now this is super important too. This affects a lot of stuff. Enemies can't shoot into a hex that has friendly units. So by moving this American up, I am out of the open space. No one can opportunity fire at him because he's now in a hex with a German unit. So they cannot shoot in here to try and retaliate. I'm pretty safe. That's awesome. Plus, if I was to move this guy, I can move adjacent to him all I want. I'm safe. Because when you are in a hex with somebody, you can't shoot out of it. So this unit could move all the way around here, and the only people that could shoot at him would be these other units. So getting into melee is really important. So in order to, and this is what I learned, that's why I love suppression. In order to increase my odds of successfully assaulting somebody, you want to put some suppression on them. So for example, let's say I was going to assault up here. I haven't moved him yet. I'm saving him. That's going to be my rush squad. So let me clean him up a little bit. Because you might be like, well, why would you assault with a suppressed unit? So let's remove his suppression. Alright, so I say to myself, I want to attack this guy. So first of all, I'm going to make a morale check to see if they will actually shoot. See, that's why this 9 is super crazy, because I just rolled a 10. So even though 9 is pretty guaranteed, that throws a big monkey wrench in my plans. I have 1 less unit to attempt to suppress them before I start my assault. Ugh. So I'm going to check with this guy. Okay, he has 10, so I know he'll shoot. So I got to look at my firepower modifiers. Let's see, he's in a building, so that's a 1. He's not concealed, so it's just a 1. So I need a 5 or less to hit. So I roll a 9. So he's suppressed. I got marked, or he's just marked used. So I'm really running out of options here. I have to decide, do I want to keep going for suppression, or do I just go ahead and assault that unit? Well, I'm going to go for suppression with this unit right here. I'm going to check. So he passes morale. He has -1 for the building, so I need a 5 or less. I roll a 1. Oh, that's outstanding. Let's find out why. So since that was a normal attack, that wasn't the proficient, that was the firepower attack, because this was a normal attack, I take 3 plus the 1 that I rolled, so that gives me 4. That's less than the 5 I needed to hit. So not only did I suppress him, but I inflicted a casualty. So let's do this. First of all, I'm going to mark this guy as used, so I don't forget. Now I'm going to flip the counter to his casualty side, and I'm going to inflict full suppression. Okay, when you inflict a casualty, you automatically make them fully suppressed. And if you notice, my fully suppressed guy, when I did the recovery phase, he went down 1 level of suppression. Oh, and don't forget, once you go through your recovery phase, you advance your turn marker by 1. I forgot to do that earlier. But now this guy's fully suppressed and has a casualty as well. This is the perfect time to assault. Because let's watch why. I move up, and let's say this guy says, I want to do the opportunity fire. That's a proficiency check. Well, check it out. I have a proficiency of 4 and a morale of 1. So 4 minus 1, that's negatives. I can't even roll that on a die 10. Let's look at the bonuses. -1 for being adjacent. -1 because the unit here is out in the open. So 2 from the 4 of 2. So morale of 1 -2. I still can't roll that. This unit doesn't even attempt to fire. They just dove for cover. They don't care who's coming. And I just stroll on in nice and easy. So yes, you can get lucky sometimes and move a unit up to attack somebody who is not suppressed at all, and you can get in there. I've done it, but there will be times where having them fully suppressed guarantees you can walk in and set up that melee attack. So last thing we're going to talk about is the melee attack. So let's say you finally got in there and you've gone through all your operations phase. You've done your route. Okay, so before we actually do the melee, we have to check for route. So here's another reason why you want someone fully suppressed before you start your assaults into their same hex. I'm just going to move this guy off to the side so you can see both units here. Now, you check route. The reason why you do that is to see if you're brave enough to stay. And route is simply a morale check. So the person who moved first is the person who makes all of his route checks first. So the American in this scenario moved first, so he has to check all of his route first. So with a 10 morale, I automatically pass. I don't leave the hex. But let's say I check all my other route. Then the German player goes. He has to check for morale. He's got a 1. If I roll, I have to roll a 1 to stay. He rolled a 10. That means he failed morale. Now, on your route check, you have to advance away from your enemy. But here's a problem. You got some restrictions on that. If you retreat and you end up adjacent to an enemy unit, you get eliminated. Yeah, it's that harsh. If there's a friendly unit, adjacent or something like that, like for example, if I had another unit in here, like if I had 2 German units in here in melee, and the German unit failed and he bailed, he'd be okay because there was a friendly unit there adjacent to him. But basically, just to simplify it, in this example here, the German unit failed his morale, and so he, let's say, backs up one hex or whatever, because I'm assuming, I'm just saying everybody here is gone. Because he backed up a hex, he's adjacent to an enemy, he's actually would be eliminated. So that's another reason why I like to fully suppress people as much as possible before I go running in. Even on a yellow suppression, like let's just change that to suppressed. I'd have to roll a 5, and if I roll over 5, see, if I rolled a 3, he'd be fine. But if I rolled higher than that, he would still fail out of that hex. So let's put him back how he was. But anyway, in this situation, he's eliminated. So I'm just going to delete him off the board. So what do you do if everybody passes their morale and you all stay in the same hex? Well, after you check for route, there's the melee phase. So that'll be the last phase we talk about. If I'm ending up in melee, after I've done all that stuff and everybody here is not suppressed or anything, melee is basically you roll 2 die 10, and each roll under your firepower reduces your opponent 1 casualty level. So in the vassal module here, they've got 2 dice. You can just roll, hit the 2 die 10 button, and it says there's a 2 and a 7. So let's just move this off to the side so you see them side by side. So let's say and the melee is kind of simultaneous. So let's say the German player rolled a 2 and a 7. Well, 2 is less than 4, 7 is not less than his 4 firepower, so I would have inflicted 1 casualty on the American. I can use a command point and re-roll that because I want to hit both. So I re-roll. Do any different. I rolled a 10 and a 1. So 1 failed firepower, 1 passed. Now the American rolls. He got a 3 and an 8. 3 is less than 6, so he inflicted 1 casualty. The 8 failed. I'll spend my command point and re-roll. Now when you re-roll both dice. You don't re-roll the one that failed. You re-roll both. So it's possible I could go from 1 success and 1 failure to 2 failures. But I'm hoping for 2 successes. So I roll 3 and a 7. I still got 1 failure. So in this example of melee combat, we each would have taken, I have to find the unit here, we would have taken 1 casualty. I'm just trying to restack up my stuff. So if that had been an actual turn as such, my attempted suppression, I advanced, whatever, got into the hex. We both passed our morale to, route checks, and then we attacked each other and inflicted 1 casualty on each other. So melee can be deadly. If you get 2 successes, you wipe them out from a fresh status. So that's I'll leave it at that. That's probably been quite a long time. I'm hoping that clarifies some rules from last time. I hope that explains some awesome things with the why decoys can be important. Shows how, maybe a better example of why suppression's important. And that's pretty much, I think, the important things I wanted to cover right there. Oh, yeah, look at the time here. I just realized I got a couple people in the pug pen. I was just so having fun with this. I don't know if they're still in here, but at Pyromancer, yeah. Normally on Mondays I broadcast a little bit later. So let's see if they're still in here. So Pyromancer, if you're still in here, basically I record a little bit earlier than I normally do on Mondays simply because I work tonight. I think he bowed out. And then we also had Afonso come in. Oh, I totally missed all his stuff. He said, long time no see, so many rules, and how do you know so much stuff? It's not that I know so much stuff, it's just from playing. That's essentially it. So if he ever catches this on a replay, it's just because I got to play, I just play the game. So hopefully this shares and expands on some knowledge there for everybody. And I apologize for not paying attention to my chat. I was just having fun with this. I feel bad. But because I wasn't expecting anybody to watch it this early. So basically that's kind of the basic gameplay in a nutshell. Obviously it goes much quicker when it's just you and your opponent. I talk a lot, so this is a lot longer than what it normally takes. Now when I played this weekend, this particular scenario, I believe from start to finish was about 2.5 hours, and that was including the instructional as well. And me, was just me, so this was really a lot longer than what it normally takes. So please don't read anything into that. This game actually does play pretty well, especially if both people know what they're doing. Then it plays even faster. And one thing with the time though too is remembering when you can use your command points. If you don't use any command points, the game will go a lot quicker because you're not re-rolling. But use your command points. It doesn't make the game that much longer, but I'd say the average scenario you're spending about 2 hours at a time. That's actually really good. So if you do have any questions, comments, corrections, go ahead, post them for me, email me, post it. I'll read them, incorporate that into another video. I might do another Band of Brothers that shows vehicles, since this was just infantry. So we might expand and do another one. Other than that, look for a new game coming up. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about fighting formations, but if there's another game that you would like to see kind of in depth, just send me a message as well. Let me know what you would like to see. Otherwise, I think the next one I'm working on is going to be some fighting formation stuff because I really like that one. So, other than that, thank you all for watching, and I hope to answer any questions that you might have. All right, thank you so much. See you later. Bye bye.